better, something simple like that. Later on, we might want to do more important things, correcting personality flaws, looking into ourselves deep and introspectively and making major changes in our personality. All of these things can be obtained through the meditative exercise. So there's a variety of things that we can do with it. If an idea is formed within the spirit based on wisdom resulting from facts, it is determined that the goal must be obtained in a natural form of powerlessness with an absolutely logical fulfillment, Billy says. Okay? So if there's a determination to reach a goal with the help of this absolute logic, a spiritual force then is created inside of us by virtue of this meditative exercise that we're going to learn about. That way the application ensues in kind of an absolute powerlessness because there's no compulsion on our part to make the event happen. In other words, we're going to set something in motion because it's correct, because we've absolutely worked it out, it's logical. We'll set it in force. The power of our spirit will more or less take over, ensuring that this logic continues. And we offer no compulsion of any kind to be involved in the outcome of that logic. In other words, we're not going to coax our spirit into the conclusion of this logic. Well, the force is created through the known accuracy of logical consistency, cause and effect. It's just simple standard logic. If you set something in motion for the right reasons, it will come to a logical conclusion. So we're dealing here then with a form of balance. If we refer back to our little chart we talked about earlier of the mind, where we had the material side and the spiritual side, you might want to get out that and kind of reflect on that as we go through this conversation about meditation, because it certainly involves many of the factors that are going on in there. When you have a thought, for instance, a thought may be a very positive thought, it may be a very negative thought, or it may be right in balance. In these beginning stages of development of the evolution of a spiritual person, most of their thoughts are going to be wildly negative or wildly positive because they have very little information about things. And our beginning selves in our early days when we were primitive, we probably, the ideas that we would start coming up with when we begin to reason and think and so forth, were probably very, very negative or positive. As we become more evolved and we become more reasoning with power, we become more intellectual, where we learn more and gather more wisdom in our spirit and begin to deal with life with more wisdom and knowledge, then we are less negative and less positive, and ultimately we deal with almost everything from a balanced point of view, where we don't offer a negative view on things or a positive view on things, but we can remain in a balanced state, which means kind of like a neutral state viewpoint on things, and then we perceive the world as exactly as it is all of the time, without imposing any of our so-called positive attitudes or negative attitudes on it. So becoming a neutral thinker is really kind of an evolution of gaining wisdom, of gaining personal freedom from illogical thinking that's in the world. It's the discovery of balance or neutral thinking within oneself. We mentioned on our little diagram of the material and the spiritual that we gather information all the time with our material senses, right? We bring things in. And then we form kind of an attitude, about them when they first come in. We immediately check with our subconscious and to see if we have any data on this. We might even check, deep thinking with our psyche to get a feeling about this, whatever. And then all of this information then has to kind of filter through our emotions and our attitudes, all this programming we build up in our material self. What we think about things, Maybe you see somebody wearing a really ridiculous looking pair of shoes. They seem ridiculous to you. And maybe they've got little bells on them and they're pink, and there's a picture of a bird flying on them or something which you regard as rather silly. So you have an opinion, an attitude. Suddenly you think this person wearing these boots, immediately you think there's something wrong with them just because of what they're wearing. Well, we do this all the time. My point is that simply being very material creatures, we program ourselves and we fall into these traps all the time of dealing with information and making judgments about life based on all these little pre-programmed attitudes and feelings that interfere with our ability to perceive life exactly as it really is. Now, what are the drawbacks to that? If we don't perceive things properly, then after a while we develop kind of an attitude where everything looks the same, where we're just angry about everything, or we have a negative attitude about everything. Have you ever met someone like that? Where I knew a guy once that all the time he'd be watching television and he disagreed with everything. That commercial's terrible. God, what an ugly person to sell that product. I wouldn't buy that product at all. Or this TV show's terrible. Everything was a negative viewpoint. This person, and if you talk to him, you find out about all the problems that he's having in life and so forth. This is a very angry fellow, very angry young man who now, because of all of his emotional problems and attitudes that he's programmed himself with, that every bit of information that comes into his world now, he has a negative attitude to it. Not even a really positive attitude. I don't think this particular person I'm thinking about I ever even heard a positive statement from, let alone a balanced or neutral thinking things. So this meditation is the process of powerful powerlessness. It's going to create a force of our spirit, and this is going to dominate the factors of our life. This force of spirit is what we're looking for. We're going to try to get away from dealing with everything with our material feelings, our material senses all the time, and start using our spirit. And to do that, we created what is called the force of the spirit. You have a force of your material self. You have this big ego, this persona of self. Maybe when you stand up and speak to other people, you're very aggressive, or maybe you're an angry person, or maybe you're very soft, or maybe you're very tender, or whatever it is. But you have a persona about you. And for the most part, you're used to using that all of the time. It becomes a habit, and you deal with everything using just your material persona. So you greatly limit your view of the world. You limit your reactions, how you can possibly react to things in the world. And most importantly, you really limit your ability to grow. Okay, we're going to get more into that into a minute. There's two essential parts of meditation which are very important. One is the attention that you pay to the object you're going to meditate on, and the clarity of knowledge about it. Now let's define here what an object is, because I'm going to use this word a lot. An object of a meditation is whatever you're directing your meditative exercise towards. Let's say you just want to meditate on stop smoking. Okay, so the object now of our meditation is smoking. It's the object to whatever we turn our meditative attention to. And let's say for the sake of our discussion here for a while that we're going to meditate on stop smoking, all right? So there's two factors that deal with this meditation principle. The attention to the object of smoking and the clarity of knowledge about what we learn about it. Okay? The main value of meditation in everyday life is the clear and keen observation of very small things leading all the way up to the highest possible goals we may want to obtain. So let me say that again. The main value of meditation in everyday life is the clear and keen observation which leads, of course, to the awareness of small things all the way to the highest goal. So what we're going to learn to do now is to see things actually for what they really are. We're going to very purely observe things. And one of the first things I want to talk about now is the observation, the pure observation itself. You see, clear and keen observation is the observation of what's going on at the moment. Okay? Let's say we'll relate that to smoking. And let's say I've got a pack of cigarettes here. I don't smoke, by the way, but let's say if I did, I had a pack of cigarettes here. And I look over at the pack of cigarettes, and immediately, when I look at the pack of cigarettes, if I was a smoker, I remember when I did, my first reaction would be, sure, there's a little pleasure there. Sure would be nice to have a cig about right now. Because we have connected to these cigarettes all these great feelings of pleasure, right? So we think to ourselves, we've already taught ourselves that if I smoke, I'll feel better. If I smoke, I may look cool. If I smoke, I can use this as a crutch for a few moments while I'm nervous. If I smoke, it's right after dinner, I'll just enjoy the feeling I get from it. Or maybe I like the feeling of the smoke rolling up my nose or whatever. But we connect many different, emotions and feelings to something that we do. So when we first, observe this package of cigarettes, all these pre-programmed things are what's going to immediately run through our mind.